let me add something to Kyle, your question about and more development revenue headed towards alternative energy projects. It's in there though, because we recognize there's a finite amount of these non-renewable sources of energy that we're talking about. Of course, we have to explore plug-in solutions that include alternative sources, so it makes sense that and more development revenue derived from will go towards the energy sources that can be renewed. And up here in Alaska, of course, we're very excited about hydro, we're excited about wind, geothermal, and that, of course, are provisions in his plan also.
Yeah, Governor's absolutely right. Keep in mind now, any one of those developments requires all the money up front before you get 1 kilowatt-hour of power. Go up and Bernie Carlson visit his geothermal plant. You know, all the money had to be in place before you got one single drop of power. Compare that to Usability's coal mine, okay? O'Leemel had, and I know him well, he had a wheelbarrow and a pick and a shovel, and he went out and he started digging for coal. And he piled it up along the railroad side, and we had enough, he sold it to the railroad, and the next year he bought another wheelbarrow and hired a guy to help him. And he built that enormous mine with no investment in the future at the time. He brought about the future with his own work. You can't do that with these renewables or alternative forms. You cannot get water power, you can't get geothermal power, you can't get any of that power unless you have an enormous cash flow to finance it. And where is that going to come from? From the development of the oil and gas of this state. So what we want to do is dedicate that to assuring that those renewables, those alternative forms are in fact invested in, so in the long term, as the oil and gas runs out, we will have a state that has power, energy from all these other sources. Water, wind, methane, the whole array of other sources require enormous investment to start with, which we do not have. We have a large fund it's coming into the state, but that's a drop in the bucket of what it's going to cost to develop water power, hydroelectric power, that is, and geothermal power and wind power. The all array is going to take investment for a long period of time. But we have the ability to do it if we can get into the development of oil and gas now.
Time for a couple more questions.
Oh, but I'd just like to hear from each of you how you feel about the other. I think there's a sort of a perceived rift or perception in Alaska that there's a rift between you two. The governor's made some statements against some of your earmarks. She said at the time your house was searched that you need to tell Alaskans more about kind of what's behind that. You haven't exactly had glowing endorsements of the GIA. What do you two think about each other, and describe your relationship?
You can go first.
Well, you know, I don't really object to the comments I made about my earmarks. I think that, you know, that they're part of a period of need. I'm not sure, with the money's coming into the state, I don't think we're going to get many earmarks in the future. We developed our earmarks at a period of need and found a way to bring these federal agencies in here through the non-commission and things like that. I don't object to people that objected to that. I think that the investigation is not a matter, and I do think that the governor had every right to say what she did. I didn't tell Anchorage about it. I never talked about it at all. I wish I had her freedom to speak about it, but I don't. So it's there, it's continuing, that's all there is to it. But as far as getting along, I don't know if you know it, when Frank Mikowski was first elected, this lady and I and the mayor of Cordova, Marcia Johnson, traveled around the state for 2 weeks. We've known each other for a long time and worked together for a long time. I've never known of any animosity between the two of us at all. We're each free to make comments about what the other does, and every once in a while she'll say I'm stupid, and that probably may be right.
And I have great respect for the senator, and he needs to be heard across America. His voice, his experience, his passion needs to be heard across America so that Alaska can contribute more, so that we can be producers, so that we can help lead the rest of the U.S. again, have great respect for him, and I agree, there's a big difference between reality and perception regarding our relationship.
Governor.
If you object to the first edition of the Sarah Ted show, I hope it'll continue.
Governor, I mean, we're a state that has unorganized areas and unique needs, which may be Anchorage is to Bethel as the state of Alaska is to Washington. But it seems like on the earmark issue, I mean, our state capital budget's full of earmarks. I mean, whether it's Fire Island or, you know, whatever, that don't fit conventional molds because we don't have conventional structure that goes across the state. And it just seems like that's been a historical part of Alaska that you have to do line item budgeting. Certainly you wrestled with that with your vetoes, but I guess the issue is, you know, the quality of a line item rather than whether you should earmark them. So,
Right. Well, especially when the state was a much younger state and we had no infrastructure. Of course, the deal struck with the federal government allowed us and encouraged us to ask for the earmarks to build our infrastructure so that we could progress, so that we could grow, and so that we could ultimately become much less reliant on the federal government.
That's what I'm getting at, though, is we do the same thing for our small communities, for Randall, Petersburg, areas in the REAA.
And there needs to be a greater reform effort on the state level also. But let me go back to the political games and that, you know, the willing and dealing at the end in that 11th hour before a budget is passed on the state level. I don't like that, and we're trying to change all that. We're trying to have things open, transparent, keeping the big picture, the entire state of Alaska in mind as we fund every project. But back to the federal earmark issue. My comments have been in the context of recognizing changes are coming. Both presidential candidates have both confirmed that they will work towards earmark reform. So just recognizing that, seeing the writing on the wall and dealing with it is where I am.
And we need to do the same thing at the state level.
Amen.
Is there a last question?
No.
Senator, on the issues of the Patriot Act and this Real ID, there's a concern by some that Americans' personal freedoms are eroding. How did you vote on those
I voted
issues?
for them.
And do you have a concern that?
No, I think they were necessary to protect our freedoms in order to prevent those who would come within our communities and to destroy us. I really think we have to be really alert to the terrorist threat to the United States, and those two pieces of legislation in particular are part of that alert system. And I do not at all I don't refrain at all from commenting on those. I believe they're necessary, and I believe we have to have the controls over these people. Read the book America Alone. A lot of people complain about that book. Well, look at Piece of Democracy. Look at the demographic concepts of that book, and just think about what's going on in the world, and decide whether we want to become Italy or we want to become France in terms of our society and how it's impacted by those who are really against us. And you know, we haven't had just one major incident in this country. And it's been because we have been on alert. It's because we've tried to stop these people. And I wish I could tell you how many briefings I've had of the number of people we have stopped because of those systems that were authorized by those laws. Now, as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm there, I'm going to try to protect these people of the United States from the intruders from outside trying to undermine our system of government or trying to destroy our people through terrorism. And we must be alert to that threat. It is a threat throughout the world. And we have been very fortunate in this period of terrorism throughout the world that we had so little of it with. 9/11 was not, you know, small, don't misunderstand me. But in terms of the day by day terrorism and how it's affected the other countries of the world that are organized democracies, we've had very little. Compare us to France, compare us to Iraq, Israel, compare us even to what's going on in Russia in terms of terrorism. And we have protected our people because we have been alert, and we should stay alert. And I'll continue to work with those laws.
One last
That was the
question.
last question.
Governor,
Yeah, last question.